square roots, but we're also going to talk about how you can estimate them, because not all of square roots are perfect squares. So first of all, what do we mean by perfect squares and non-perfect squares? Well, here's some definitions that you can pencil in on your notes. So numbers whose square roots are whole numbers are considered perfect squares, such as 64, 4, 196. If you find the square root of those, you'll find that they're all whole numbers. Non-perfect squares are numbers whose square roots are not whole numbers. When you find their square roots, they turn out to be a decimal, and quite often a very long decimal. So that's what we know about non-perfect squares. So to estimate a square root, we just find the square root and get the decimal version of it, and that helps us out. Or we can use a number line to locate the whole number that square root of 50 should be in between. So for example, if I get my calculator, which I'm doing on a separate screen so you can't see it, but if I do the square root of 50, I get 7.07. 7.07. And the decimal goes out a little bit further, but that's what it rounds to as far as nearest hundredth. So which two whole numbers will this be closer to? Well, if it was 7 and 8, 7.07 would be a lot closer to 7, right? So if that's the question I was being asked, I would say, well, it's closer to 7. If I was asked to round this to the nearest tenth, then I would look at my number and say, well, this is the 10th digit, so that 7 is going to round that 0 up to a 1, so I would end up with 7.1. Okay, how about estimate this value of the square root of 22? It is in between and what? What two whole numbers would that be in between? Now, another way to do this is to say to yourself, well, what's 4 times 4? Well, that would be 16. The next perfect square up would be 5, so 5 times 5 is 25. So if we were talking about a number line, and this is 4 and this is 5, the square root of 22 is going to be somewhere between 4 and 5. Well, what is it closer to? Is it closer to 25 or to 16? It's closer to 25. So the square root of 22 is going to be somewhere up closer to 5. So it's between 4 and 5, but closer to 5 than it is to 4. Now let's estimate it. So on my other screen, I'm going to do this 22, do the square root of that, and I end up with 4.69. And if I round out to the nearest tenth, that would be 4.7. So you have to watch out for what decimal it asks you to round it to. And as you can see, 4.7 is up here closer to 5 than it is over to 4. All right, how about the square root of 103? Well, we know that 10 times 10 is 100, right? So 10 times 10 is 100. Then the next whole number up would be 11. So 11 times 11, which would be 121. So this square root is going to be somewhere between 10 and 11, but it's going to be a lot closer to 10. So 10 and 11, but it's closer to 10. And if I do the square root of 103 on my calculator, I end up with 10.148, or if I round it to the nearest tenth, that would be 10.148. 3.1. So not too bad. These are really doable. So how about this next one? Which of the following square roots is best represented by point A? Well, on my calculator, I'm going to do the square root of 7. Square root of 7 is 2.64. 2.64. Square root of 12 is 3.46 something. So the square root of 15 is looking like our answer. Square root of 15 is 3.87. If you round it to the nearest hundredth. So that's going to put it really close to A right there. So the answer to our question is this. And I didn't even try 8 because 8 was actually back between 12 and 7, so it would have been back in between these two decimals and not even close to what we're looking for. Okay, which of the following would be the best estimate for the square root of 198? So on my calculator, 198 square root, and I get 14.0712 if you want to take it out that far. So which one of these numbers would be the closest? Well, this would actually round to 14.1 if you rounded it to the nearest tenth. So our best estimate is going to be A. All right, between which two integers would the following square roots lie? Well, square root of 90 is 9.48. So if I write that right there, that means it's going to be somewhere between 9 and 10. How about the square root of 175? Square root of 175 is 13.22. So that's somewhere between 13 and 14, but a lot closer to 13. And the square root of negative 12. So I'm going to do the square root of 12. And because of where the negative sign is, this is going to be negative 3.46. So it's going to be between negative 3 and negative 4. We have to remember what we're talking about in this situation. Okay, Rebecca bought a square rug for her office. If the area of the rug is 65 feet squared, estimate the side length of the rug to the nearest tenth. So again, if we have a square rug, we know that the area is just one side times the other side. So when you multiply those together, you get side squared, and you get a total area of 65. So to find side, we just take the square root of both the side squared and 65, and we get one side equals, and the square root of 65 is 8.06. And they wanted us to round it to the nearest tenth, so 8.06 would round to 8.1 feet. So that would be our best estimate for the side length on that rug. Okay, create and label a point on the number line to represent an estimate of the following square roots. So if we do the square root of 5, that would be 2.23. So 2.23 is just about 1/4 of the way over. Square root of 88, 9.3. So 9.38 actually, or about 9.4. So that would be about right here. Square root of 17 is 4.12 or thereabouts. So that's going to be somewhere really close to 4, not very far over from it. So right about there. The square root of 118 is 10.86. So that's going to put it somewhere just a little over, well, almost to 11. So 10.86, somewhere in that area. And our last one, 56 square root, is going to be 7.5 rounded to the nearest tenth. So that would put that one halfway between 7 and 8 at 7.5. All right, that's kind of fun, wasn't it? All right, make a statement below, or mark each statement below as true or false. If false, rewrite the statement correctly in the space below the statement. The square root of 202 is between 14 and 15, so let's do that. 202 square root is actually between 14 and 15, that's true, but closer to 15, and actually it's actually closer to 14. Yes, it is true, but it's closer to 14. Okay, the square root of 7? 7 square root is actually 2.64, so not true. All right, how about the square root of 99? 99 square root is 9.95. And so that puts it, the square root of 99 is greater than 9.5. That is true. So that's a true statement. No other explanation needed on that one. Okay, so today's assignment is on ALEKS, number 51, estimating square roots. Again, it ought to be quite easy and quite fun like the last few have been. So good luck.